Hey guys, what's up? This is Panzer Dragon, and today we'll be doing the top 5 best top laners for solo queue. In this patch, Lissandra did get nerfed, and I'm going to be doing some honorable mentions. As in the last top lane tier list, we didn't do any, so I want to give you guys a variety of champions that are good right now. Of course, most champions in the top lane are pretty viable at the moment, but in my opinion, there will be the top 5 always. And so with all that being said, let's get started. Alright, so number 5 we do have Fizz. Alright, so he's a really good early game, mid game bruiser and assassin at the same time. He relies mostly on his base damage and his attack speed build with the W, since the lower the health of the enemy, the more damage he can do. He's a really good tank destroyer with Blade of Ruined King, plus his W, as if you do the math and add both of the passes up, it does 8% of the target's maximum health, so you'll be doing a lot of damage with each auto. He has incredible all-in at level 6 because of his fish giving him 20% more damage on the target that has been hit by the shark. That means no one can really trade with him at that time, and since there's a lot of CC and Gak closers coming from Fizz, it is very hard to escape the all-in. Also, since he does have teleport and pretty good mobility, he's very good at ganking out of the lanes, which means he's pretty good at snowballing. Two cons about Fizz is I don't really like his team fighting that much, and he does kind of fall off late game since his damage kind of falls off. Next at number 4 is going to be Rumble. So Rumble has pretty good base damage in his kit, and pretty decent AP ratios. When you do have good base damage, this means you're a consistent top laner, since you do scale with levels more than items, and so all you really need is some magic penetration and you'll be really good. His ultimate is also great for zoning out enemies in teamfights and following up on other initiations, since it is a pretty ultimate to get out of when used by itself. And if Rumble does get a snowball lead in the lane, let's say he's the only magic damage in teamfights, the enemy will definitely have to get some magic resist to compensate for that Rumble who's doing tons of damage in teamfights. Once you get to Liandry's, you can definitely do a lot of damage, especially if the teamfight has just started. And getting resists like Abyssal and Zhonya's will definitely complement the shield that he gets from his W to make him a tanky mage. Some cons of Rumble is that he may overheat in teamfights, which cause him to silence himself. Of course, that's overcome if you know how to manage your heat. And second off, his ultimate isn't really the best initiation since it does require some kind of lockdown on the enemy already, or else the enemy could just walk out or dash away from it. Next up at number 3 we do have Hecarim. So Hecarim is really strong in the top lane. He can go teleport to ignite since he has the escape with his E or his R, so he doesn't really need flash or ghost, which means he has more kill potential over the enemy and can definitely keep that pressure onto him while still having teleport for the map mobility. The best part about Hecarim is that he snowballs very hard, more incredibly harder than any champion in the top lane right now, just because of how great his roaming is with his E and home guard teleporting everywhere and ganking other lanes while being a bruiser, which does a lot of damage and it's really hard to get away from him. He's definitely really good against melee since it's hard to trade with him, as he does give an auto attack and a Q at the same time, and his W gives him a lot more trading potential as it does heal him for the damage he's dealing. He does have trouble against range matchups since it requires for him to use his E to all in the enemy and then go in for a long trade, but it is a high cooldown and it does leave you vulnerable to ganks. He is also a pretty good split pusher since he can just get to the teamfight really quickly with teleport or just using his E and catching up. Although he does have some cons. First of all, he is kind of vulnerable to range matchups, so it's kind of not the best idea to pick him against, say, Gnar. And second off, his damage kind of falls off late game, so you're just basically a meat shield, and the only CC he has is E and R, which isn't the best CC, but it is mediocre. But definitely right now, he's definitely a scary top lane to deal with, and he's very annoying since he can just teleport bot lane or any other lane and home guard in and probably kill somebody. Next up at number 2 is going to be Aurelia. So again, she has not been nerfed in a very long time. She is like an assassin bruiser, as she does have a lot of tools to kill the squishies. And when she gets a lead in lane, she can definitely take over the lane very easily. One thing I do find really strong about Aurelia is of course her true damage, but I'm gonna have to put it on the 2-second stun coming from her E, and it has high base damage, which is 280 at max level, and I just think that's very powerful and enough seconds to kill the enemy AD carry or the enemy AP carry. And of course her W and R give her some tankiness since she's kind of life-stealing off the enemy, so it does kind of help when she's building all these resists like say Frozen Heart or Spirit Visage for the enemies. And she does gain a huge power spike once she does get Trinity Force and doesn't really need to build any damage after that, so I think she's definitely a great top laner right now. Although her true damage does fall off late game since people start getting health, but at this point it doesn't matter, she's probably building full tank, and it's just going to be that frontline meat shield. And at number 1 we do have Sion. So Sion is just this incredible tank. He has strong base damage, a lot of CC, and is very tanky because of his W. He's very consistent. Even if he gets behind, he's still a tank, has a lot of CC. And even though in this patch his E got a mana increase at higher levels, it's pretty easy to get around. You just have to manage your mana a bit more better now. He also has wave clear with his E and Q and W, so if the enemy team tries to take down a tower, he can just wave clear that and delay the game a bit more. His cooldowns are actually pretty low, especially if he gets cooldown reduction, so in teamfights he can constantly put that CC onto enemies. And it's just like he's the strongest tank probably in this game at the moment. And he does have a decent initiation as long as the enemy doesn't sidestep it, but it is more of a gap closer also. So if you do miss it, it's not like the end of the world. And when you do hit that ultimate, you can chain it with your Q for an even harder lockdown, stunning the enemies for a good 2 or 3 seconds. And if you do kill him in team fights, well, he's just got his passive to zone the enemies and kill them all, or just run around and tell the enemies to back off you, because you will do a lot of damage in that passive form. Some cons of Sion is he's really easy to outplay. For instance, you see his Q winding up, so you can just sidestep it or dash out of it, but most likely you'll be using an enemy's escape, so it's kinda worth it. And then you have his R, which you can easily sidestep. Either way, he's incredibly consistent, he's good at all stages of the game, and scales really good into the late game. He's also pretty easy to use, so if you don't know what you're doing, just pick him in the top lane, and I'm pretty sure you can let your team carry you while just being this meat wall for them. Alright, so honorable mentions. First up we do have Riven. And she was in the tier list before, but I feel like Riven mains are like basically the only players who should be playing Riven, as they know exactly what to do in each matchup. They know what combo to be used in a certain situation, and they know how to do that Q auto attack cancel, Q auto attack combo thing. I'm not sure how it went, but it was something like that. And they just know exactly what trades are good if they can kill the enemy at this point, and just basically knowing the champion to their limits. A lot of people will say Riven doesn't have a high skill cap, but understanding the champion and knowing her limits is way harder than just pressing a few buttons to kill the enemy squishies. Next up is Kennen, and he's pretty good. His laning phase is okay, and in teamfights he just does a lot of damage and can stun a lot of enemies and lock them all up, and just provide incredible zoning for a given time. The only 2 big cons I don't like about him is how he requires flash for most teamfights to be really good in them, or if the enemy has a knockback, then he's kinda useless. Next up is going to be Lissandra, and she did get 25 damage off at max level for her Q. It's not that much considering she does build AP, but it is of course one of her most used skills, so it could detriment in, say, harassing the enemy over time. And it's kinda like the Ryze treatment. His damage got nerfed by 40 at max level. He was basically never played again, but unlike Ryze, Lissandra still has a lot of utility in her kit. She makes really good zoning with her ultimate and has a lot of CC in her kit, so it's not that detrimental to her. Just a little bit in the laning phase, but that's about it. Next up is Vlad, and I do see him quite often in solo queue nowadays, and honestly I think he's a pretty good champion, especially if he's left alone in the lane and doesn't get camped and gets his farm on. He definitely becomes a threat in the later stages of the game. Ignite isn't really taken in the top lane, so it's kinda hard to kill him, and he scales pretty good into the late game. Right now he's not very popular, but I don't think he's sleeper OP, I just kinda think he's sleeper decent. Then there is Morgana in the top lane, very safe, really good against AP since they can't really do anything against her, and she does have pretty good sustain with her passive, so it's really hard to kill her. And then when mid game or late game comes, she can easily shoot those bindings, lock people down, and initiate team fights, and then of course give her or her teammates Black Shield to protect them. There's definitely more champions I can list in honorable mentions, like Jax I guess, but then I'd be making a list of viable champions in the top lane, and a lot of champions are viable in the top lane right now. It's just the champions that I think are good in the top lane will be listed in honorable mentions. Hey guys, so thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did enjoy this video, maybe you'll enjoy top 5 best AD carries for patch 5.4, and also mid laners, and then also top 10 best junglers for patch 5.5, since this was a really big patch for junglers with a new tank item. So I definitely want you guys to check out the top 10 best junglers, since it's pretty interesting in my opinion. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, subscribe right there. It's free, it's easy, and it's one click away. And I am Panzer Dragon, and I'll see you guys next time.